2023 preseason tie. I know, I hate saying it. It kind of sucked to watch. Honestly, I'd forgot they changed the rule, but whatever. It's preseason. Still plenty to talk about. Most of it good. And for that, I'm going to enlist the help of Bryce Coots from the Hawk Zone Rundown, quarterback coach and podcaster. He'll be joining me to talk about kind of the good, the bad, the ugly of the game, what we liked, what we didn't like, some of our Seahawks superlatives. And I think you're going to like most of what we talk about. So let's get into it. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
There he is. There's Bryce Coots. Long time no see. I feel like it was just yesterday you were down here in the Emerald City hanging out watching Football Fest, because it kind of was just yesterday, actually, just a few days ago anyway. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you, Dan? Yeah, it feels not that long ago. It feels like we were just out for dinner, a few nights ago and talking up Seahawks.
Yeah. And here we are playing an actual game. Obviously, this was the biggest story of the day. No, that's not the right picture. Hang on. There we go. Jeez, all sorts of technical difficulties today. Obviously, Pete Carroll coming back to Lumen Field, as well as Gino Smith. He played the first series. We weren't really expecting that. We got to see a little bit of Jamal Adams, sort of in all of his glory last night. What was it like for you just seeing Pete in the black and gray or black and silver?
It was interesting. It was definitely kind of tugged at the heartstrings a little bit because, for so long, especially the attire Pete wears to games, right? The long sleeve shirt with the team logo on it and the khakis and all that and his monarchs and it was interesting to see that. The fan reception was awesome. That was one thing that, I expected it to be. Pete's going to be a legend here in Seattle forever. And overall, though, I don't know. It was weird. It felt weird. I don't know, Dan. It felt weird to see the guy that had, taken us to 2 Super Bowls and so many other things, and so much success for such a sustained period of time on the other sideline coaching against us. And even Pete acknowledged that in his postgame, going like, hey, there were a few times where there were plays that were made. And I thought it was, I was back in Seattle on the Seahawks sideline and it was my guys making
yeah, like you started cheering for it, right?
Exactly, right? And so it was good. But the one thing I will say that was pretty evident, the level of compete factor in that Raiders team. You can just feel it wherever Pete goes, wherever Pete coaches. That's something that definitely comes out in those teams. Is definitely a strong representation. And it's one thing I think Pete's going to bring to Vegas.
Yeah, I think it was probably a good thing that his first visit back here was a preseason game, right? It would have been a lot different, I think, if it was a regular season game, everything on the line, Gino playing the whole game and the whole deal. We'll get into Gino here in a little bit. Just want to throw this up there. Shout out to all of the good folks that I got a chance to meet last night at the game, left to right, little Cooper there and Jacob, and then my buddy Tyler, who ended up sitting right behind us. Got to know those guys last night, so wanted to give them a shout out. Also, before we get into it, wanted to make a little bit of an announcement. We've talked a little bit of it online, but things went so well last weekend with the 4 of us hanging out, doing those live shows, going out to dinner, all of that, that we're going to make a thing out of it. So just kind of around the horn here. No, we're not going to call it that. We're going to let that show sit in its history. Rest in peace. Brandon Kane in the Hawks Nest up in the upper left-hand corner, and then around to me, and then Mookie Alexander, managing editor of Field Goals, and then around to you. So the 4 of us, I believe we've set it for the last Wednesday of every month. We're going to do a live show. We'll kind of rotate it throughout our channels and rotate who's going to lead each episode. But the 4 of us will get together each month at the end of the month and just kind of recap the month that was, which I think works out pretty well because, Pete used to always talk about, he's not the only coach that talks about this, but, dividing seasons into 4 quarters, right? Which is roughly 4 months, 4 games a month. I know there's a 17th game now, whatever. So it'll give us a chance to kind of go quarter by quarter and look at the season. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And the name of the group that we decided is the Seahawks Syndicate, which I think hits a pretty good note there. So, no, I'm looking forward to it. It was so much fun talking with, yourself, Brandon, Mookie. We were lucky enough to have Corbin join us for one of those live shows. It was a lot of fun. And then even just, being at the Fan Fest, watching the practices and stuff and being able to bounce off what we're seeing with one another. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm happy that we're going to be able to do this once a month throughout the season.
So we kind of started talking about this a little bit, but just some of our bullet points for today as we work through this review. I will say this. I think year 2 now, first opportunity to play a game-like setting in Lumen Field. And I thought there was a different energy in the stadium yesterday. I was glad I went. I don't always to preseason, especially when they're late kickoffs like that. Makes it like I wasn't able to do a reaction show last night because it's just too damn late by the time I get home. But I felt a different energy in the stadium. And I think they even showed second half when some people, when you're up 16-3, some people are going to leave. They showed the decibel meter, down on the field, and it was hitting like 108. And that's not easy to do. The record's like in the 130s. But there have been times over the last 5-6 years where they've struggled to kind of hit 100 in the regular season. And so we're talking about a stadium that was 2/3 to 80% full at any given time, which is typical for preseason. And it got so loud in there that it made an impact that, Coach McDonald said he pointed that out in his post-game press conference that the Raiders had to go to their silent count, which is pretty remarkable. I didn't feel that last year. And I even talked to some fans in the stands too. And I sense that Seahawk Nation is starting to buy into the new coach. They've gotten over whatever, feelings were hurt last offseason when their beloved head coach moved on. They can sense something is happening here, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is like you said, Dan, the buy-ins there. I think you saw that throughout the OTAs from the players at least. We saw, what was it? Corbin and Greg Bell commented on how it was like the first time every single player at some point they had everybody at OTAs throughout the offseason. And I think we saw it at training camp too with the level of intensity that training camp did provide and the competition level, and then carries over into the game. And the thing for me, I think, Dan, that really stuck out was when those 2 interceptions happened and you got the pen. And I get it's preseason, penalties are a thing, but like when you're taking 2 penalties because the entire bench almost clears to go celebrate, you can see the continuity, the kinship with all these guys. It definitely feels like you're right. Something is special. It's about to happen. And I think the buy-in to Mike McDonald, even Mike McDonald seemed different on the sidelines, I thought, at least from the TV view that I had. I would say he seemed a little more relaxed than he did last year. Like last year, he was very kind of uptight, it seemed. This year, a little bit more emotion was spilling over, between himself and Dirty and so on. And, the one thing that was always interesting was to see how many pens Clint Kubiak had stashed in his hat at any given point throughout the game.
I didn't catch that. Does he do this? I used to do this when I was a bartender. Does he put him here like this?
Oh yeah, he had his red Sharpie on one side and he had a pink highlighter on the other, and he had 2 going at one point. I think he even had one in the back, and it was it was kind of a Mike Robb, and I got to give credit to Dan on the TV broadcast. Mike Robb and Michael Bennett are absolutely hilarious together.
Bennett's
and the comment.
Yeah.
There were some comments he was making that were just absolutely hilarious.
All right, let's get into some of the stuff we saw at the game, and let's begin where everybody, where all the eyeballs were primarily, and that is the offensive line specifically, and the offensive performance as a whole, the scheme, the structure. 2 really good drives to start the Clint Kubiak era, even though, a little disclaimer, no game planning happens in the preseason, just so you know. Like they don't even watch a stitch of film about the Raiders, figure out what they're trying to do. And then they themselves are also going to run a much more vanilla game plan, obviously. But what did you see just out of the offense as a whole first? Let's start there, and how it looked different from last year.
Oh, I felt like it almost threw me back to watching Mike Holmgren. That's how I felt with, Robbie Oots in there and the fullback and the multiple tight end sets and the single receiver sets and running the ball, like just running the football. Like, I don't know how many yards or negative yards we had on a run play. I think maybe in the first half, maybe there were 2 runs. I think there were 0 or -1. Other than that, we were gaining 3 to 5 yards a carry. And then obviously we saw some where we popped him and George Chalani went for 20 and he went for 30. But the thing for me was also just the get off of the offensive line in particular, like that starting group. Like there was such a driving force this offseason. We have to get the run game going. And it's something they talked about. We want to run the ball. We want to dictate terms to our teams that we play. And I know, again, like you said, Dan, there isn't game planning, there isn't certain things, but you could feel that Seattle was actually able to do that. Like seeing Abe Lucas out there and that starting O-line, Jalen Sundell, like that whole group, even Anthony Bradford, like it was impressive to see them get off the ball and move people down the field. And, seeing our running backs not really getting touched till they were about 4 yards down the field on some carries. And then at the same token was the passing game. Like Drew Lock had a clean pocket to work from for most of the night. I don't even think Seattle, they gave up the one sack with Jalen Milroe, but outside of that, like their offensive line kept the quarterbacks clean. And you could see what we had talked about on the live shows, which is something that I really loved. The intermediate in the middle of the field passing game became a thing, and it was off that play action and the under center stuff. It was really fun to watch, and me, for an offensive guy, I absolutely gushed and loved it. And there were points where I was playing the game back like 3 times, watching a concept, going like, wow, I haven't seen that for years, and just seeing how it works and stuff. So no, it was really exciting. And obviously, I know one thing we're going to touch on at one point here tonight or today is Robbie Oots, the fullback impact of having him and his ability to be such a weapon. He's going to be, I think, more of a weapon than people may have initially realized when we took him in the 5th round.
Yeah, it was so refreshing to see concepts executed that just make sense. And that just, the striking feeling I had during the first drive, and 2 very different results from the first 2 drives. Drew throws the interception on the first drive. The second drive, they go down, score a touchdown. But I just kept thinking, like, why was it so hard to do that last year? Why are those concepts that Ryan Grubb didn't understand? Why, like we saw 12 personnel, we saw 22, we saw a lot of 2 tight ends, we saw the fullback, we saw, the condensed splits and all of that. Here's their first drive. As far as the sequencing goes, I really like this. I was a little surprised the very first play wasn't a run. I kind of thought that, that's kind of how they would come out and do that, right? First play pass, second play run. Halani around the left end for 19 yards. They pop a big one, and that's the one that a lot of people are talking about. We can get into it a little bit later with Robbie Oots, but he leads the way, goes in motion slightly, leads the block. Eric Saubert really helps seal the edge. Jake Bobo blocking downfield. Like all those things you hear about were all kind of thrown into a bowl, and the recipe came out as a 19-yarder, and it just looked easy. The next play, they throw the football. Drew Lock has 4 seconds to throw the football on the next play. Unbelievable. And, well, I'll get to that in a second. And then a Halani 4-yard gain behind who was leading the way? Anthony Bradford was out there just moving bodies. Then a 3rd and 2, which was really, really their Achilles heel last year. 3rd and short, any short yardage. 3rd and 2, they go Halani up the middle for 5 yards. He wasn't alone, but Bradford also was moving bodies on that one. And then they go 4 straight passes, ends in the interception. But and this was against the Raiders had some of their starters out there. The block from Oots was on a guy named Max Crosby, who I think is pretty good. Like, great, despite the interception, right? We get that. Like, Drew had his typical Drew-like performance, some good, some bad. I was beaming watching that drive.
Yeah, watching that initial drive. And the thing that I think you saw what it's like to have an NFL offensive coordinator again script out and run different things to see what he's going to get from the defense, and not just go, I really want to do this, so we're just going to do it anyways. Be more of a patient approach of, hey, let's give him a little bit of this, a little bit of that. How are they going to adjust? What is our counter going to be? That was one thing for me watching Clint Kubiak last night. And this, again, to the point of not game planning, he has an answer for what the defense is going to present him with. So, hey, you're going to try and line up with an overfront and try and stop us from getting to the outside on our outside zone. Cool. We're going to go right into inside zone and gash you in the middle there. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was the amount of cutback opportunities and the couple holding calls that the Raiders defensive line got trying to slow down that outside zone. There were a couple times where I think it was number 96 got 2 holding calls on the second drive back to back, or close to being back to back. And it's like, that's an indication that they're trying anything to stop that momentum from going in that direction. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hold the guy. The other interesting stat, and I got to give Mookie Alexander credit for this, Dan. He texted me this today. He goes, they counted 7 straight dropbacks from under center for Drew Lock last night. Drew Lock alone, just under center, straight dropbacks. Gino Smith had 6 for the entire season last year.
That's crazy.
So in one game, we did the same total that Gino did in an entire season. And I think that just shows you how much more balance there is to this offense. It's and when you get a certain thing going, you saw like one of my favorite throws Drew Lock made, I think last night was I think it was about a 13-yard initial completion. And then there was about another 5 yards ran onto it by Derek Young. He hits him right over the middle in stride off of play action. And that was the other thing, under center play action, straight drop back. Like coming out of that's stuff we didn't see last year. Like, I don't know, Dan, watching the game, I didn't get to a point where I was like, hey, they're faking it this way, so they're going to do play action. I had no idea where the play action was going to come from, either the left or the right side. Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to Michael Bumpus today on 710, and he was talking about that too, that on that first drive, which is, I think, 9 plays, he counted 6 different formations. And just, he talked a lot about what you mentioned, the under center, the unpredictability, just everything looking the same. And you don't know based on down, situation, formation. You just don't know what they're going to do. And I think it was even better on the second drive. Obviously ends in a touchdown, 10 plays, 75 yards. This is the sequence on the second drive: run, pass, and then they alternated the next 3: run, pass. Ends in a 1-yard touchdown for Helani. They finished the half 7 out of 10 on third downs. They had a 13-7 edge in first downs overall. 75 rushing yards. They averaged almost 5 yards per carry. Tons of time to throw. Raiders didn't even get close to Drew Lock in the first half, and then 2 out of 2 scoring in the red zone, which was also a really, really tough aspect of the game for them last year. And again, this is against a Raiders team that started, at least for the first drive or two, many, if not most, of their defensive. Of their defenders. We even got to see Jamal Adams in there talking a little shit. He looked fast, I thought Jamal did. And he made those 2 back-to-back run stops. I was like, okay, like we saw the workout video from the offseason and that looked explosive, but that only tells a part of the story. Like I'm pulling for Jamal. He was feeling it. He was pointing at the sidelines afterwards, but that was kind of cool to see him running around out there.
Yeah, no, and I think Jamal's in a more natural spot for himself now at the point he's at in his career, playing that kind of hybrid linebacker role, like where he's not being asked to cover deep. He's kind of in the hashes, and he kind of, I'll agree, he looked very explosive. But the other thing for me is he creates mismatches for the offense, because he can cover a tight end in the 10-yard range pretty well. He can get to the flats with some explosion and speed, and you can blitz him. We know that. We saw it in Seattle. When you bring him off the edge on a blitz, he can get home to the quarterback. And I think that's what you'll see Vegas do with him. But I'm going to pull for Jamal to see him be successful, because the injury he sustained here could ruin guys' careers, realistically, that quad tear. And we saw the repercussions for 2 years following it. Like, he never got that kind of quick twitch back that he was known for in New York. I'm hoping he's got some of it back now when he's in Vegas.
Talking about the offensive line again specifically, everybody wants to talk about Gray Zabel. Brian Baldinger even did a breakdown on him today. That's always a good sign. We'll kind of circle back to him. But what did you see out of we got Jalen Sundell as a starting center, and then Bradford started at right guard. And I was surprised to see Lucas out there with the starters, to be honest, with his injury history. But maybe the thought there was that they're just confident enough in that leg and that he just needs the reps because he missed half a season last year. And then Josh Jones on the left side too. You and I talked throughout camp that he's that swing tackle position seems to be a real upgrade on this roster, and Josh Jones is a big part of that. He looked the part at left tackle.
Yeah, Josh Jones really did look like a good option at left tackle. And the thing for me with Gray Zabel and Brian Baldinger spoke to it today, was the one thing that went through my mind watching that game, was when he gets his hands on you, you're not getting away from Gray Zabel. Like, there was a point on one of the plays, I'm pretty sure he literally was blocking until he heard the whistle, which is an adage that you teach kids, like block or play until you hear the whistle. And a lot of times you see guys give up at a certain point. Gray Zabel was blocking well past Drew Lock had let go of one of his passes, but there was no way that guy was going to get to his quarterback. I thought Jalen Sundell, and Dan, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like Jalen Sundell might have made a massive push on Olu for that starting center job, watching him orchestrate that starting offense at center. Even the snap that went awry wasn't actually on him. That was more on Drew. It went right through Drew's hands. Yes, it was a little off to the right, but it wasn't like he fired it over his head or only one hand could get to it. It still went right through both of Drew's hands. I was really impressed with Jalen Sundell last night, and I really think it makes it a much more interesting competition now, because of the other person I'm going to mention I thought had a really solid night was Christian Haynes with that number 2 unit at left guard.
Yeah. We'll get to Haynes. Here's my stance on Sundell, though, and there was another position group too where it came into play. Somebody was talking to me about it last night, but the way I view it is this: they feel so good about Oluwatimi and what he's done up to this point that he didn't play last night. And so I'm not saying Sundell still doesn't have time to insert him back into that competition, but I think they want to make a decision before they go to Green Bay. And I think them holding out Oluwatimi is an indication that he's the guy.
The only thing I'll say on that is Olu was injured. That's why he didn't play. I think the intention was for Olu to get some reps, but he is injured from what I understood. So that's maybe why he didn't play. I agree. I think it's still Olu's job. All I'm saying is I think Sundell may have closed the gap on if they needed to make a switch. There's a higher chance they could make a switch to Sundell if they needed to. If Olu didn't necessarily, things weren't going the positive direction at the beginning of the season, I think they're less inclined to be like, no, we're going to stick it out, and more be like, no, we will insert Jalen Sundell if we have to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see next week if Olu plays a little bit of center. There is the thought, and Mike kind of hinted at it last week, maybe he'll play the starters a little bit against Kansas City because Andy Reid typically plays his starters more than some other coaches in that second preseason game. And so maybe we'll get to see a little bit more configuration there and maybe get to see Sundell at right guard a little bit again. Let's do this. I did prepare this little piece of video. I think I kept it short enough that we won't get in trouble. Let's see, where are we? Here it is. But this is just an example of what we saw out of Zabel last night. This is that one play. This is Tonka Hemingway he's going up against here.
Yeah.
Just a kind of a classic stretch. That's a wide zone staple, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only a 3-4 yard gain, but you just watch him lock onto Hemingway, and he does not finish the block until he's on the ground. Like, we haven't seen that from a Seattle offensive lineman in quite some time. That kind of mentality that, like, until I hear the whistle blow, until the play is over, I'm going to play it one more time just because it's so much fun to watch. Like, I'm not coming off of you. Jones, I mean, that's a great rep for Jones right there too. He does the same thing.
And the thing I like about Jones on this is you can see the understanding of the system and what it is. Jones initially, based on where Hemingway's lined up, takes a step inside and gives him a slight shot before going out to his actual assignment to allow Zabel to get there. And then once Zabel, again, gets his hands on you, it's not going anywhere. I love the fact it was Oots and Zabel that finished off Hemingway there and both ended up on top of him. It was pretty good to see.
Here's what Mike McDonald had to say about his thoughts on how the offensive line played.
You felt the line of scrimmage. You felt the physicality. I felt like being able to, they gave us a couple pressures there early where we weren't necessarily expecting. So being able to kind of identify the front, get everything targeted the right way, and sustaining blocks. I thought that was really good. And I thought we kept the quarterback clean for the most part, especially in the first half. So a lot of good stuff.
I want to talk about the running backs again, too, because everybody was focused on Pete and Mike being the real matchup of the night. But how about the matchup of the last two prolific Boise State running backs? Ashton Genty came in for the Raiders. I was surprised that he got some touches last night at all. Didn't do much with him. What did he have? Four carries for -1 yard? Was that it?
Yeah.
But a really good showing for Helani, I thought. 81 yards rushing on 8 touches, I believe it was. Had the touchdown. We saw him in pass protection. We saw how quick he is to the edge. You don't really see it on game day, but we saw it at practice, and I've gotten to see it up close a little bit. I like how he's put together. He's a big dude. And then later in the game when Damian Martinez got his opportunities, I didn't know who I was watching. That did not seem like the Damian Martinez I fell in love with at Oregon State and at Miami that averaged that more than 60% of his touches last year, carries, yards, came after contact. A guy that looked like a mini beast mode, running people over. He looked hesitant last night to me, tentative. He just didn't seem like he was running hard last night. What did you think of the running backs?
So I think Helani proved that he deserves to be more in that conversation of being on this team, where I think yourself, me, we kind of had conversations. Is it Helani? Is it Martinez? Well, they drafted Martinez, and we were going off the same presumption that we were going to see the same Damian Martinez we saw at Miami and Oregon State. I was not impressed with Martinez's running last night. He did have a couple really good pass pro sets where he picked up guys. Like there was one with Drew Lock where they were going to do a play action and Martinez basically bailed out on the play action and picked up the edge rusher that was coming free, which is great to see from a young running back to have that understanding of the protection and where the free guy is coming from. But yeah, he had a few of the same things I saw in that training camp practice I was at with you, Dan, where he slips. He slips more than any of the other running backs I noticed. And I don't know if that's just something to do with how he's cutting, but I also didn't see the finish in the run I thought I'd see, where, you know, we saw in Miami where he's, you know, run through a guy. Like he made the quote when he came out that I'm going to be beast mode 2.0. Well, he didn't really run like beast mode 2.0 at all last night. He kind of ran like a rookie running back that's trying to make a roster because he's not necessarily skilled enough to go higher in the draft. And it was really odd. I hope he bounces back. I hope, you know, gets the jitters out. It was first NFL game and he's able to really gear up and go versus the Chiefs, because I think Helani may have jumped him in this running back room and potentially on this roster to make it. The thing I'll say about Helani is I think he proved he can be a 3-down back if you need him to. Like he can run in the tackles, he can run outside, he can catch. How nice was it to see a well-executed running back screen for a first down on 3rd down and +10? That was something we haven't seen in ages.
It warmed my heart. I was going to say something else. I was going to say something more adult than that, but it invoked an emotional and a physiological response in me to just see a well-executed screen, the way that we've seen so many teams run successfully against us in the recent past. And we just haven't ever had a coordinator, at least not probably since Bevel, who was capable of doing that. It was cool to see 61 yards on 7 carries, averaged 8.7. But he also had a catch for 20 yards as well. So 8 touches there. So 8 touches for 81 yards. And then I thought, and I think it might've happened while we were at practice together too, but I feel like every day in practice, something happens where I'll turn to someone and go, did you see number 31? Did you see what he just did there? Like Jarcadia Wright, he's a practice squad guy, right? They're only going to keep 3 running backs on this roster. But he's stacked. Like he's solid. He's quick. He gets up to full speed quickly. He has great contact balance, catches the ball well. I think he's a practice squad keeper and a guy that looks like he could play if he needed him to. 7 carries for 34 yards last night, 4.9 yard average, and a touchdown along of 11. Damian Martinez, just 10 yards on 6 carries. Before we move on, this is Mike McDonald on George Helani.
Yeah, I feel like we don't talk about George enough, but he's just kind of the guy that does everything right all the time. And it's great to see him have success because of how hard he works. So, George's a great, you saw the runs, but, the kickoff tackle was a big play for us. So I think he's a pretty well-rounded player.
Skill positions. Before we talk about your expertise and the quarterbacks, how about Tory Horton? I can't quite recall a camp where a rookie hit the ground running on day one, started making plays every single day. Rookies flash, but the consistency with which he's performing in practice, and then to be able to carry that over in the game. He had the cool punt return. He had the touchdown. We saw how well he catches the ball. We saw the route running. It was kind of, just 3 catches last night, but it was all on display.
Dan, for me, I go, if this guy hadn't been hurt last year in college, we probably don't have him on this roster. He's going as a top 50 pick, I think, as a receiver in this draft class. And so now when I see him and what we have, like I said, in my opinion, when we were down there this weekend and all of us, I think there's a very good chance that Tory Horton is receiver 3 before week 5 of this season. That they're just not going to be able to keep him off of the field because he's so impactful in the things that he does, the way that he moves, like him in and out of his breaks and ability to find zones and sit in them. Like you add that with, we talk about, okay, we need MBS for that speed and that ability to take the top off. We know Tory Horton can do that as well. He can fly if he needs to. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this receiving core shapes up come the end of the preseason, but I just see it getting brighter and brighter for Tory Horton in this offense.
Yeah, and the MVS thing is fascinating. Like, there's a financial component to it. Obviously, there's $3 million guaranteed. So if they cut him, they save $1 million. But then they have the dead cap hit of $3 million. They didn't play him last night. They gave him the starter treatment. Whereas there were guys like Bobo who are going to make this team that were out there. And so I still think he's on the roster. But if I'm doing the roster today, I'm putting Helani on it, and I'm waving Martinez and hoping he gets through to the practice squad. But if he doesn't, that's cool, because Jarcadia Wright might be pretty darn good too. Let's talk quarterbacks. Want to?
Sure.
For those of you who don't know, Bryce is a quarterback coach, has a quarterback academy up in British Columbia, is an offensive coordinator, coach, all that stuff. Drew Lock returning to Seattle after his year away. And let's start there before we get to Jalen Milroe and all the excitement that he created in the second half. I mentioned earlier it was kind of the typical Drew Lock experience, right? The interception was bad. He had a couple of other throws that make you kind of wince. Maybe he had too much time to throw and he just wasn't used to it. I'm not sure. But it just seemed like his timing and anticipation wasn't as good as it has been in camp. He's had a really good 2 weeks in camp.
Yeah, I would say definitely the interception. That ball in that situation, you need to learn to eat it or throw to your check down. Like, if you're not and it wasn't like he had a bunch of pressure in his face. It was more of, I think he trusted his arm to make that throw a little too much on that one. And I like Drew Lock's got an arm. Like, he's got a hose. Like, that thing, he can rip the ball anywhere. And we saw it at different points throughout the night. The thing for me, though, in that is you're in scoring position. Like, if you don't get that, you throw the check down, you get 5 yards, it's fourth down. You put Jason Myers out there for a field goal, and potentially that's the difference in this game right now, is that interception as it ended in a tie. I was impressed, though, with Drew's processing. Much cleaner than it was when he was first here in Seattle. He didn't get stuck on any reads too long, which is something that, for me, has been a problem for Drew since he was in Denver, is he'd look and he'd lock in and he'd be stuck on that read and he wouldn't be able to come off of it. And there were points last night where he had to move in the pocket. He had to create space, and he was able to still find targets downfield and find the completion that's there. Because, like Tom Moore, who's one of the oldest coaches in the NFL, one of his favorite sayings is, there is a completion out there somewhere, and it's your job to find it as the quarterback. I think Drew's done a much better job at doing that this year, and especially in camp and in this game. So that was one thing that impressed me with Drew. Overall, I feel much better in a situation where if we had to go a 2 or 3 game stretch, Drew Lock could win us 2 out of those 3 games.
12 out of 22, 147 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Well, now let's talk about the rookie, because I think that had a huge role in how many people stuck around until the second half. I really do. I think there's a lot of educated football fans out there, and they knew, like, hey, let's see what this kid can do. We've heard so much about him. He goes 6 out of 10, 61 yards passing, no touchdowns or interceptions. But he's 3 for 38 on the ground, 12.7 yard average, a long of 27. Like, this performance from him, like, he didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't have any of those throws that we've seen in training camp that make you go, okay, this kid's got it. This kind of felt to me like the floor performance of what you can get from Jalen Milroe. If there at any point this year he were to have to play, right, like, kind of an efficient, like, no big plays, but he converts some third downs, makes some plays for you with his feet, doesn't hurt you, doesn't turn the ball over.
Yeah, there were a couple things with when Milroe went into the game I was going to be interested to see. How did Clint Kubiak's offensive scheme change? And it did actually quite a bit. They were much more shotgun based in a lot of sets, which I think is 2 things. I think it's Clint allowing it to be an easier process for Jalen to get comfortable in the NFL. He's used to playing in gun from Alabama and in college, and they did put him under center a couple of different times. One of his better throws of the night came off a boot action to Tyrone Broden there, where he kind of came over on the over route there. The thing for me with Jalen, there is a throw he makes, and I think it was to Ricky White. I want to say it was Ricky White or it was Broden. And you see Lang, the tight end, hook up, and you basically run what we call a hammer concept, where you get the deep dig route in behind at about 12 to 15 yards, and you got to hook from the slot or tight end at about 5 to 7, and you kind of layer it. But you got to be able to anticipate that throw. And when you're going to throw that in and rip it, and he ripped it. And that was one of the throws I went, okay, there is progress. There is improvement coming. He's starting to get it. He's starting to get how to be a passer and not just a runner first. And then there's the throw he makes, the decision he makes on fourth down there where, like, I get what he was trying to do, and he had to try and beat a linebacker one-on-one, so he did the other thing and threw it. I think this year and next year, Jalen's probably going to run that ball going forward next time. He maybe doesn't make that throw. I still think he's 2 years away. I still think 2027 is when we'll really have that conversation about, okay, is it time to look to Jalen Milroe as the next quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks? But up until that point, I think you can use him and spread. Like you saw the read option out of the end zone. He runs for 24 yards down the sideline. It's things like that where you now create for a defense a real issue with what package do we put on the field? How do we get those subs out there to deal with this kid and his athletic ability? And the thing that I thought was good too from Jalen is you didn't see him bomb it away. You didn't see him throw a deep ball and really, like, you know, do what he's kind of known for being exceptionally well at. You saw him get through progressions. Like he threw an out route that was incomplete to Broden, where I thought he threw with great anticipation. And I think Broden actually probably didn't get out of his break as well as he should have. He got one hand on it, but the ball and the placement was great.
Yeah.
I didn't look at any passes last night and go, oh God, there's that awful, like, Senior Bowl level kind of throws. I saw, hey, this is a guy that if you didn't tell me Jalen Milroe was taken in the third round or anything like that, I would assume, yeah, he could have been a late first round pick with what I saw last night and be like, yeah, he's a developmental quarterback. We've got guys in place, but hey, we've got something here for the next 10 years potentially once he gets developed.
Yeah, the thing I liked is, you know, the worst performance I've seen from him in this camp was last Friday. It was a rough day for all three quarterbacks. Defense had a heck of a day, but it just seemed like a day that his muscle memory just kind of left him for a moment, right? It's like I use the analogy all the time of when you're learning a new golf swing, you know, it feels awkward at first, and then you see the results and it works. But every once in a while, the old muscle memory comes back, and you get caught in between. He had a day like that last week where he was throwing flat-footed again on the intermediate stuff. He threw a couple balls at receivers' feet. And I thought, okay, that's the guy that I saw in Mobile, Alabama. Since that day, I feel like his response to that day has been in part goldfish, like forget all about it, never happened, and then also just getting back to what he was doing, because since that practice, I feel like he's been really, really accurate and really, really good. And this is what I like too. This is a shot that I took myself last night. This is one of his scrambles, and he just makes it look so effortless and so easy.
Oh yeah, this was like his first play of or second play of the game. He just kind of bobbed out, but yeah, he glides. He doesn't really look like
doesn't even look like he reaches top
trying.
Speed here. Like if he wanted to, maybe he could have taken it to the house, but he wanted to extend the drive, right? Like he scans the whole field, and then he's like, "Here I go." Just makes it easy. Yeah, it's so natural, it's so effortless for him. Let's talk about some other superlatives, because there were a lot of guys that stood out. And normally in preseason games, the young guys get the most opportunities, and they're the ones that get a chance to shine. But in this particular case, it's specifically not all, but a lot of guys from this draft class, this rookie class, is looking better and better as we go along each day. Who are some guys that impressed you the most? And specifically on the defensive side of the ball, we haven't really talked about them yet, but there were a lot of guys running around making plays last night.
I think one of the obvious ones on defense, Nick Emenwari, you felt his impact and how fast he is, and what I can't wait to see him with the starting unit with Witherspoon out there and Love and Kobe Bryant and all those guys. Like there was one play where he literally looks like he's going to blitz, backs out, comes back, and then at the snap of the ball, he's gone down and tackles Genty for a negative, or I think it was a 0-yard gain on a rush play. And it's things like that where you go, okay, this guy's going to be a weapon X for Mike McDonald on defense, and even maybe more so than what Kyle Hamilton was in Baltimore, because of the athlete Nick Emenwari was. The thing for me too that stood out, Jared Ivey stood out, and so did Connor O'Toole stand out for me, or Kevin O'Toole? Connor?
Yeah.
Connor. Thank you, Connor. Couldn't remember exactly. Connor O'Toole. They stood out. Yes, I get they're going against 3s and 4s for the Raiders, but they stood out because Ivy was so good against the run. which is something we kind of knew, but it's something that, I wanted to see in game. I wanted to see him actually bring it to the NFL. And O'Toole is coming off the edge as a pass rusher. I thought he provided some nice, collapsing of the pocket. A couple other guys stood out for me, Dan. Tyreek Smith, who's now back. He was good against the run, but he also was fast coming off that edge. Like, he surprised me seeing him actually now 3 years into his NFL career.
Yeah.
You started to see some of the stuff you saw from Ohio State come through a little bit. There's a couple things I'd like to see him. He needs to jump less. Sometimes he's jumping at the offensive tackle, which is kind of weird. Another guy for me, Nehemiah Pritchett. I thought the one interception he had, he baited Aiden O'Connell into that throw so well. He made it look like he was taken off into a deep third, into like a cover 3, and just put on the brakes and just jumped it. It was great. And Ty Okada looked good to me last night as the number 2 running that defense with Drake Thomas. Looked very comfortable, good in run support, didn't get beat over the top on anything really. Those are some of the guys that, that I'll say that stood out, because I know you probably got your own list and I don't want to double up on anybody, but those are some of the guys that I kind of wrote their names down in my notepad last night going like, yeah, you know what? This guy stands out.
Yeah, Smith jumped out to me from the get-go because one of the first plays of the game, he had a great, to your point, had a really nice run rep and stuffed, got in on Ashton Genty and stopped him at the line of scrimmage, really locked out the tackle with his arms and just kind of really controlled him and made the play. And that was notable because last week McDonald talked about Smith and the question was framed, what does he have to do to make the roster, basically? And he said, well, keep doing what you're great at. And he said he's a great rusher. And so that then implying that the other parts of his game needed some work, but I thought he was really good in run defense too. And he just seemed like a consistent presence. Like, I'd love to see, we don't always get these the deeper analytics in the preseason games turned around as quickly. I'd love to see what his pass rush win rate was last night, because it just felt like he was impacting the pocket on just about every single play, even though they only ended up with the 1 sack. Ivy was the same way. He just seemed active. You just noticed him a lot. He was in your view a lot, led the team with 6 tackles. And then you said to me last night that you thought O'Toole popped. And I thought, well, he had the sack, but I didn't notice him at all the rest of the time. But he led the team with 3 quarterback hits. And so I just wasn't, it's probably while I was watching some other things. So that was good to see as well. And then I think I said this last night on Twitter. I'm going to do a show on it this week and get into it a little deeper. I think we might be okay at nose tackle. Like, even if Jonathan Hankins doesn't make it back, and, no pun intended, because he's nursing that bad back. Like, if he can get back healthy, you want that guy in the locker room if possible. But I thought, most of the narrative out there since the game seems to be that Quinton Bohanna had himself a really nice game, got in on some run stops. But I just keep seeing Brandon Peely flash as well and show off that athleticism that McDonald talked about when he was asked about him last week. I think between the two of those guys, there's some juice there. And I kind of like them both. I honestly don't know if I only had to pick one, which way I would go. But if Hankins can't get healthy, they might keep them both.
Yeah, I definitely think Bohanna and Peely popped last night, and they definitely showed up, and Peely's energy showed up. Yep. Like, he was amped up after every run stop. He was, one of those guys that I felt throughout the game, especially when the Raiders tried to establish some sort of a run game. Him and Bohanna were really good at shutting it down. And man, there was one shot where Bohanna's running off the field, and I just looked at it and I went, that is a large man. That is a large man to have to move, but he's athletic enough to move. So I think they're going to be okay at nose tackle. I think our nose tacklers, as much as people are super worried because we don't have like a big name there or some stud, I think that rotation of those 3 could be really, really beneficial for the Seahawks.
And then we got to give a shout out to special teams, because in a tie game, it had to just drive Pete Carroll crazy that they lose the game on a special teams mishap. That Daniel Carlson's field goal gets blocked by, I think it's Jalen Gaines, the undrafted rookie. Had to drive him crazy. Pete's a guy that always used to talk about the special teams. But I thought as a whole, the coverage teams were good. I thought Horton had the nice punt return. Everything was fielded cleanly. Good day for Jay Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think he settled into his role a little bit, and we'll have to see throughout the season, but overall, I think I also think they've got some maybe better pieces for that special teams unit that fit in some respects with some of the young guys they brought in. Like a Williams at corner, and some of these guys, I think, having to play gunner, and Derek Young's a really good gunner. I think you're going to see a better special teams unit this year. Jason Myers still worries me because on his one field goal attempt, you saw that ball start pulling left. And I went, oh no, here we go again, like what we saw at training camp the other day. So hopefully Jason Myers can stay consistent, which he's been something for us for a very long time. So I just overall, that was the first time I could really say for myself that it's an era change in Seattle. And that is now a Mike McDonald type team and not a mishmash team. It is a Mike McDonald team.
Now, what did you see that you didn't love or that has you concerned?
What I didn't love was once you got past, I would say, the starting 5 receivers, you really started to see some of the maybe reasons why they may not keep more than 5. The other thing for me, I'd like to see more out of the tight ends. I know AJ Barner didn't play. Elijah Arroyo did some nice things, but I still think there's more untapped potential to use him in different things. Eric Saubert was what I thought he was going to be. The other 2 guys didn't really do much for me where I went, wow, like these undrafted guys are going to be, practice squad guys or that. The one thing I was also kind of not, at least offensively, wasn't impressed with was Brady Russell. Brady Russell didn't kind of what I had seen in camp and at the Fan Fest. I was like, wow, like Brady Russell's really looking good. And then in the game, like has the penalty. Just, I don't know if he didn't settle into the game right or something, but he just didn't kind of translate what I had seen and heard about him in camp into that first game. So hopefully that gets corrected. Defensively, inside linebacker, like Drake Thomas and Patty O'Connell looked okay. Like especially Pat O'Connell, like to your point, Dan, we talked earlier about it and you really liked what you saw. And I've gone back and watched it, and I have to agree with you more. I think he did stand out more than Drake Thomas initially. But, like, Jackson didn't really stand out to me at all. Like, I don't think he's a guy that's going to make this roster.
So slow. Like, his pursuit is just, it takes him so long to get up to top speed.
Those are the things for me. I wouldn't say I would have really any massive concerns from this team. I would say there's more positives coming up because it felt more cohesive as a unit. Defense, offense, special teams all playing together and playing with an identity of what they're going to be seemed way better than last year.
Yeah, I guess my one concern is I'm still a little worried about corner depth. I think after Pritchett, there's a lot of question marks there. The Raiders stuck with Aiden O'Connell a lot longer than I expected them to yesterday, and I think he's a quality NFL quarterback. I think there's teams in this league he could start for. And so I thought, that obviously allowed them to get back in as the Seahawks kind of emptied their bench and went with some of their third and even fourth receivers. You had, Isas Waxter out there and some undrafted guys. He of the 4'6", 340. So I'm a little concerned about that. Shaq is back. He's supposed to start practicing again this week. McDonald says they have a good practice plan for him. They want to get him up to speed. I feel like they need him. And if he doesn't kind of get into the groove and make an impression, then they might be in the market for a corner. Because the second half defensive performance obviously wasn't great. And I've had some fans come to me today with like, well, aren't you concerned? We gave up a 16-3 lead. We almost lost the game. We let them come back. Well, they were playing more of their 2s against our 3s, I felt like, for a good chunk of the second half. And then Cam Miller comes in, the third guy out of NDSU, and he gets to Marion Williams on a pump fake on the double move. And that was just kind of a dagger. I mean, that's a play coming against a guy that's not going to be on the roster. Right. So those things don't concern me. I guess I would have liked to have seen, as I always do, but I would have liked to have seen more impactful pass rush is the one thing. I know the starters weren't out there, but you'd like to think that your second and third guys can get a little more heat too. And the fact that we just got the one late sack from O'Toole, never really even pushed O'Connell out of the pocket that often, was just a tiny, tiny little concern. Not worried about what'll happen when our top guys are out there, but if I'm just judging this game in a vacuum, that's the one thing that kind of stands out.
Now you make me think about it a little bit more. I would say edge too. Edge is definitely something for me where when you look without Mafe, Hall, Lawrence there, you can really see a steep decline. So That's one thing I think they may be more interested in. And it explains why I think Jadeveon Clowney might be more of a realistic option than people realize sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I just think he would fit really, really well. McDonald would know how to use him. You know, he'd move him around a lot. He'd kind of be that Swiss Army knife. I think he'd fit really well. And if they can get that kind of play against better teams, you know, as we get into more serious football from those young guys on the interior as nose tackle depth on those early downs, I think that's a good combination. I think you'd be okay there. Let's see what some of the folks have to say. Yeah, John McGrath, always good to see you, buddy. Says you could feel the energy and excitement from the players. That's super good to see. Again, it reminds me of the LOB years. I'm starting to believe that opening week, 49ers at home, all the anticipation and excitement that people have about this team and this coach, I don't think many people are going to be selling their tickets to that game. I think we might have a chance to see maybe the loudest, craziest home crowd that we've heard and felt in quite some time for that game.
That's kind of the vibe I got coming out of that preseason game with the crowd noise and listening to Sam do his interview on the sideline with Cliff Averill during the telecast. He even said for a preseason game, it shocked him at the noise level and just the energy that was brought into the stadium. I think that this team has, being in the 50th season, there's obviously the jersey thing happening with the rival jerseys that we'll see at some point. This team looks like it's ascending again and not kind of just stuck in being mediocre. I think you're going to see a lot more people go back to being at Seahawk games rather than selling their tickets. Yes. And I think that first game versus the Niners, because it has such high stakes for week one of that season, as much as some people go, oh, it's week one divisional game like that, when you don't play them again till the end of the year, is absolutely huge. That should feel like a playoff environment game.
I feel like we've seen enough. I want your thoughts on this. I think I know what your answer is going to be. I feel like I've seen enough that all of that worry and consternation that I remember feeling as that offensive coordinator search dragged out through the offseason, right? And we're like, are they going to go with the Hank Fraley, or they're going to go that direction? Are they going to go with the young guy that ended up, I can't remember his name now, ended up going to Bill. Yeah, Udinsky. What are we doing? They talked to Kubiak early, but did they not like him? The process obviously was intentional. It was for a reason. And that reason was to choose the right guy, and the guy that McDonald felt the best about and had that alignment he likes to talk about. Everything that I see and how this team practices and executes and the way this offense is going to be run, I have more confidence just about how they call them offensive coordinators for a reason, how the offense is going to be coordinated this year. On top of the fact, I think there's a whole bunch of talent on the roster on that side of the football that I think if you took this coaching staff and this scheme and went back in time and had them coach last year's offense, this team wins that one or two more games they needed to get into the playoffs and might do some damage. I feel so good about the decision McDonald made to target this scheme and hire this staff.
So it's interesting because I've talked to a few people that are connected and have sources, and I have sources as well that are involved. And the biggest thing I think in that process you were talking about, Dan, and why it took so long, was the big caveat with Clint Kubiak and why they really liked him. Like, he was the guy that McDonald liked the most out of the group. Was could he get the rest of the pieces of that offensive staff? Could he get John Benton and Rick Dennison and Andrew Janoku and all those guys to come with him? Was a big piece of that. And that's why it took so long. And now that you're reaping the benefits of having an NFL staff with almost 50 years, or I'd say over 50 years of combined experience, you're seeing it coming in a preseason game, week one of the preseason, and going, wow, that looks like a very good, even for a vanilla offense. It's structured. It works well. It runs efficiently. Like, you're not sitting there going, man, like, how many times last night did you look at the Seahawks and go, damn, they went 3 and out again? Like, at halftime, they were 7 and 10 on third down. That's not something we've been able to say for a very long time, that, hey, we were 75% on our third down in the first half. Like, those are things that make an offense effective, is staying on the field, staying on schedule, moving the ball, taking time off the clock from the other team's offense. And then when you put that starting defense we will have, that we all expect to be a top 5 unit, with an offense that functions that way, that can make things really hard, because now we see what, the LOB had, which was now you have to take shots. Now you're trailing. Now you have to do things you don't want to do when you're on offense, and that defense can take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's something that I said. I know we talked about it at dinner last week that, man, if you can get this coach with his scheme and that defense leads, that's just something we haven't been able to enjoy the last couple of years. It's just, as a season ticket holder, it's always frustrating. You get to the game, you're so pumped up, you're excited. You can't wait to see how that first drive goes. And it was so often, as you said, it just, 3 and out, or 3 in an interception, or 2 in an interception, or whatever. And it just felt like you were swimming upstream, sort of fighting the currents with that offense at times. I feel like this is going to be one that's going to dictate some things. They're going to play downhill more, and there's going to be just enough explosive plays to really keep defenses honest. And that defense is going to be able to pin their ears back and play with a lead more often than we've seen in quite a while. Let's get to some of our super thanks. Sorry I didn't jump over there quickly enough. In Kubiak and Benton, we trust. That's right, Josh DeHuman. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Martin Lawrence says you can see the improved offense already, and you always know where they're from when there's a C in there instead of an S. He must be a neighbor of yours, Bryce. Peter Go Hawks. My main focus is on Jalen. I wanted to see how far away he was from being a starter, and it looks to me like a year. What would you guys say? We've talked about this concept a lot, that the best problem to have would be 2 years from now, he looks like he's ready to be a franchise quarterback, but also Sam Darnold is coming off 2 really good years. And I have no idea. None of us do. None of us can look forward in our crystal ball 2 years and figure out what John Schneider or the Seahawks would do about that, right? You could extend Sam Darnold, keep them both. You could extend Sam Darnold and trade Jalen Milroe. And if he looks that ready, maybe you get a first-round pick for him, or you get a nice package the way the Packers used to always do when they would pedal off their backup quarterbacks. Or maybe you just maybe you trade Darnold with a year left on his deal to a team that's a quarterback away, and you hand the reins over to Milroe. None of us know what that's going to look like 2 years from now. But every single day that I watch him progress, I become more confident that he's going to reach or get closer to his ceiling than he is to his floor. And his ceiling is franchise quarterback.
I think that's going to be the case. I think the fact that you don't have to rush him into being anything more than a developmental quarterback right now allows you to kind of play with house money at this point. Because if Sam hits and Sam does well and he's a top 15 NFL quarterback, and then you've got Jalen in 2 years where you're going, yeah, like Jalen's close to what Sam is now, that's when the real conversation will begin and get kind of fun as an organization to be like, hey, we're doing really well, and we've got these 2 wicked quarterbacks sitting in our QB room. That's a pretty tantalizing situation to have. So, I would say still 2027 for me is going to be the year to really assess where Jalen's at.
And I'll keep saying it out loud, try to speak it into existence, because I know there's fans out there that think this way. Try not to talk yourself into the idea that Milroe should be our 2 and they should move off of Drew Lock to free up a roster spot and some salary cap space. They have a plan in place, and the way you execute a plan properly, people that are really, really successful, is you stick to it no matter what. You have conviction. You don't change the plan out of emotion halfway into it. And so I really like the plan, and I think that they are determined to stick with it. I figured this would come up, so let's go. Let's do this first. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing, who came out to one of our live shows last week. Good to see you, buddy. Credit to Brandon Kane of the Hawks Nest. Emin Warrior has a nickname, He-Man Warrior. I hadn't heard that. That's pretty fantastic. That's pretty good.
I'm on board with that for sure.
I mean, I don't know if it's as good as mine for Cooper Cuts, but nobody seems to like that one. So I'll give Brandon this one. And then this one, did you guys see Gino Smith flipping off the fan? Of course we did. It was also Max Crosby, though, by the way. There was a different camera angle.
Yeah, Crosby does it well.
He was doing it too, but it's because, and it sounds like from what I was reading today, that there's a particular fan that sits down in that corner and writes signs, insulting opposing players. I just don't get that. He looks like a grown ass man too. He looks like he's my age. I just don't understand that, man. Maybe I'm growing up. I never thought I would, but maybe I am, and some other people are stuck. But I just don't get calling people. I just don't get it, man.
No, the sign, like I saw,
shouldn't have done that. Let's get that straight too. I want to be on that side. Like, you should be better. You're in your 30s. You've been in the league a long time. That stuff shouldn't bother you. I know he's wound tight and he has that chip on his shoulder, but just like I'd laugh that shit off. I think they're wrong on both sides.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I just don't get it. It's not worth the ink of a Sharpie to make a sign like that, unless it's, propping up your team or maybe teasing, go ahead and rib the opponent, but be witty, be funny, be smartly humorous. That's low hanging fruit, because he probably loved Gino when he was here.
Oh, absolutely. Probably.
That's probably how that went. What do you guys got coming up on the Hawks Zone rundown as we get into week 2 of the preseason?
So we have our recap show. Me and Ryan will be doing that tomorrow morning live, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Sunday, we are doing a preview, our last preview for interdivision rivals with someone from the Arizona Cardinals. So that'll be coming out during the week. We'll have our Pulse of the Hawk segment at some point on Monday. Yeah, I know, right? That's another one. Pulse of the Hawk segment with Mookie Alexander will be on Monday, and that'll be a live one. So we'll get Mookie's thoughts on what he saw from field goals there. And then, we'll do our preview show at some point for the Chiefs game and kind of get rolling, but it won't be till the season that everyone will see kind of all the cool shows we'll have lined up throughout the week.
I will turn my eyes towards the Chiefs here starting Monday. But for the next couple of days, just checking the schedule here, I'll be out at practice tomorrow. It's an afternoon practice. Sunday's morning. That one's open to the public. Monday, I'll be out at practice. And then Tuesday is the last public practice of the year, man. Training camp ends quickly. And that's when they officially end training camp. Like, it really doesn't matter as much anymore because the players stay at their homes. But, back in the days when they would stay in college dorms, that would be when they all got to go back to their homes. So I'll be just, reacting to practice and filing camp reports after that. And then just booked an interview next week with Warren Sharp. I'm really looking forward to that. I've dove a little bit into his analytic guide, the preview for the NFL this year. He's got some interesting things to say about the Seahawks, but everything he does is kind of numbers based. And so I want to challenge him on some of that stuff and kind of try to reconcile some of that with what I've seen with my own eyes and see if we can make some sense about what this team might look like this year. Any final thoughts on what you saw last night?
I'm very, very, very high on where this team can go this year. That is what I will say, more so than I was even after FanFest. I thought the division's within their grasp. I'm thinking my bold prediction might be a little bit less of a bold prediction come halfway through the season of them winning 2 playoff games potentially.
Okay. I mean, for now, I'm sticking to my 11-win prediction just because it's the NFL. It's tough. Things can happen. It's really hard to win more. It's hard to win 11 games in this league. It's really hard to win more than 11 games. If you saw Cynthia Froyland's computer simulation where she runs like 1 million, if she runs every game in the league like 1 million times or something like that. The Eagles, I think she had it 10 wins and everybody else was like in that 7 or 8 win range. Like, that's just kind of what happens the more, the more you spread the data out. But I am too. I think their ceiling is 13 or 14 wins. I'd agree. And I mean, there's other teams out there that you can say that too. I think the range of possible outcomes, I guess this is how I would capsulize it, that I believe the Seahawks have this year is more narrow than some of those other teams that could win 13, but could also win 5. Like, I'd put the 49ers in that category again. Like, they could win the division, go to the Super Bowl again, but they could have another year like last year as well. I think the Rams kind of have that sort of volatility to them too. I think the Seahawks floor with that defense and now showing us that they can run the football, control the ball, have more of a tempo offense. I think the floor is 8 or 9 wins now. I really do. And that gives me just a lot of comfort as we approach this season. Also, we got out of the game yesterday. Raiders and Seahawks, no significant injuries at all. That's always a win right there. I'll take no injuries in a tie over a blowout win and losing a couple guys anytime.
Totally agree, Dan.
Yeah. How How would you feel about, because I think the Green Bay game, I think we can expect to see Jalen Milroe. Like maybe.
Oh, yes.
Maybe.
For 3 quarters.
Maybe wire to wire, right?
True. That too. Yep.
But against the Chiefs, I just want to throw this one last question at you because someone else brought it up over here. Would you kind of like to see him flip-flop? Maybe give Jalen a chance to play with the twos. Like I think Darnold's going to play for a drive or two. Maybe give Jalen the rest.
I would like to. Yeah, I'd like to see what he does with the twos and see how he does against 2 competition level too. Not 3s and 4s. So yeah, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, until then, we'll be back with all of that. But I will see you all Sunday. I will not be able to record anything tomorrow. I just have too much going on after practice. But I'll be back Sunday and just kind of wrap up what I saw through the weekend, and we'll start getting ready for the Chiefs. Be sure to subscribe to the Hawks Zone Rundown if you hadn't already. Get over to Bryson Ryan McMillan's channel over there and subscribe to those guys. Do it here also if you haven't yet. Until then, I'm Dan. That's Bryce. Follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our shows. I think that's all we have left to say, except for forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it.